Okay, everybody, we are live here on the first full episode of Roads to Liberty on the Voluntary Virtues Network. We had an episode last week, but this is the first official episode since the network has launched, and we are glad to be here today. Let me tell you something. Don't go anywhere. The Roads to Liberty is a very complicated road to come down, to travel down. It can have many twists and turns. It can have many bumps along the way. Myself included, my road included coming down the street where there was no viewers on my show at 8 p.m. Thank God, but in a way, not thank God, because I didn't market it properly, and that's what I do. Right now is something very special. We're doing a live show, which is always awesome, but we're doing it in the context of a huge network where there's people listening to us and people out there. And it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome that we have this platform. It's pretty awesome that we're able to do this. And I want to thank Mike Shanklin for the possibility that I have to do this. I'm trying to get the link going and everything so I could just real quick just share this on Facebook and say, hey everybody, come on through. The show has started. The show has begun. As you can tell, we're making it a little bit more informal this week, with good reason. I'm going to be fully honest with my audience today and say that I almost missed my own show, which on the roads to liberty, it's really hard to have liberty if you're not awake to receive it. No, but more importantly, I think I said this last week. I'm just the show host. I'm just the guy that sits here and kind of is going to be moderating the forum. Liberty doesn't get done without you and I and people showing up. So it's pretty cool. This doesn't have to always be the classroom feel. You know what I mean? It could also be pretty informal. It can also be kind of just a conversation. Today we have a awesome guest planned. I'm going to be bringing him in just a moment. He's a long-time buddy of mine. We go back. I'm going to ask him if he remembers when I met this guy. My friend Greg. I think we probably met sometime in like middle school or something like that. Here he is. Thank God, my dude. Yeah, but here's a kid who's just been, I say kid, he's a grown man now, but he's a guy that's always been really, kind of a guy that never, started anything with anybody. He was kind of just I don't want to say like just a chill guy, but I mean that in the best way possible, just a really chill guy. And but he's lived a lot of life. He's been all over the world. He's a business person. He's a computer guy. And he himself also found liberty. So I think it's really cool. I think it's cool to have him on, and maybe we'll get some viewers popping in, popping out. But we are going to ask him a few questions and have him tell us a little bit about his road to liberty. And we are going to discuss what it was like for him to have liberty in his life when he was overseas. He was in the Southeast Asia, or at least I think the Asian continent, period, doing business and living life. But what I found really fascinating in the pre-show when I spoke to him is how he found liberty and found his. We're going to get into the very specifics, but he essentially found his road to liberty. He started on his path of liberty. During this time when he was out there on the road and finding out what the rest of the world was like. So to bring that worldly view into the program and to have Greg explain a little bit what it was like for him to not only just come to the libertarian position, but also to come to the position in a global sense, not to necessarily just do it here on American soil, but to do it all around the world. So as we try to get him in here today, we're also waiting to get some of our viewers in here. It's so cool. I used to have a radio show back when I was in college, going back a few years now, and it was the same sort of thing. I think my show was like on like a Friday as well. I think it was like the similar time too, like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And I always have like a 1 p.m. class, and then I have so much time to prepare, and I usually just kind of rest and let the day go by. And I love the radio because, especially a college station, I just didn't. I felt like no one really cared what I had to say, and then before I knew it, there's people that wanted to be on my show, and people that wanted to call in and request a song or whatever. And this platform is going to be like that. I'm sort of giving myself a little bit of a break because at the end of the day, I know what Mike wants to do is he wants to have an hour or whatever your block is. He wants to have your time filled every single week, and he wants you to talk about liberty and non-aggression principle. It's no problem. This network is going to grow. The Voluntary Virtues Network is going to grow. It's going to expand, and I think it's going to be a centralized location as much as we can want one to take care of our liberty content needs. I'm experiencing a little glitch here. Hopefully, we're still sending out a broadcast. I might have to actually shut down. Oh my God, we're back. I say we, I mean everybody's back. Everybody left, and now everybody's back. Thank God. Where did we all go? Why did we all leave at once like that? That was crazy. Oh my God. No, my computer had a freaking meltdown, and I'm really sorry. I don't know what this is gonna look like, but we got something on the air. We got something going on today. It We just need to get Greg in here. That's gonna make it really perfect once we have Greg. Sorry about that, guys. We had a total computer meltdown. The way I look at it is, now it's not dead air, so at least Mike doesn't have a black screen to stare at. He's got my beautiful face. And pretty soon we're going to have a guest. Pretty soon we're going to have an actual show for you guys today. It's going to be great. What email? Greg. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Mike's been super understanding about all this. He's like, don't come to me and tell me you're late for your show, or don't come to me and tell me you're not going to make your show, or stuff like that. He's like, just, you're an adult. Just if you can't do it, don't do it, whatever. But the programs, we want them to be on time. Like, he's like the kind of boss or teacher or like person you'd have to be responsible to that you don't mind, and like wherever they're coming from, like you kind of get it, and you don't ever really feel like they're out there to get you. Like, and it's so cool to have that guy as your like, not boss, but just as someone that you kind of have to take orders or direction from. So it's really cool. Like I said, I had a radio program when I was in college, so for me this is just the same thing, but except for my computer just hangs up whenever I try to do this. I'm sorry, guys. This is the worst right now. I don't know what's going on. I feel really bad for y'all. Total computer meltdown again as soon as I try to invite Greg. Oh, here we go. Why is it doing this to everybody? Why is it doing this to us? Oh, man. This is no way to run a program. This is no way to spread liberty. The great thing about doing a Google Hangout show versus doing a radio program is the fact that, oh, here we go, I'm getting something again. Is the fact that when I fail on radio, you only have to hear the failure. When you fail on Google Hangouts, you get to watch it. You get to really watch and breathe it all in. All right, we got our guest here. I think we're gonna try this thing out. Cool. Hello, Greg. You coming on the show today? Oh shoot, he's here. That scared the crap out of me. Hey, Greg.
How are you?
Man, are you a sight for sore eyes?
Thanks.
Roads for Liberty. Roads to Liberty, the show where if it actually goes on and a guest shows up, we can all just turn it off and go home, because that was amazing. Oh my God. Wow, man.
Here for a moment. I had some technical difficulties, but I got here.
Oh, don't blame it on yourself, Greg. You know that you covered for my ass. I was like in bed sleeping like no more than 15 minutes ago. But I have good excuse, man. I'm sick. I'm recovering from a little personal illness situation that I'm not going to bore anybody with. But how the heck are you doing, man? What's going on?
Man, no complaints. Just floating around, hanging out, being lazy.
Good. Laziness. No,
lazy too, but
That's awesome. So I'm gonna give a little proper intro for you, Greg, and then we're gonna get into some meat and potatoes. And I'm gonna share the link too. This is crazy, man. Did you see my computer crash before? Were you watching the feed? Did you see that when that happened?
No, I've been staring at a screen that said join, and I didn't click on it until just now. Which is why
cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's clever of me. But
it's all good, man. Maybe you could like come on another time and like when I know what I'm doing, like down the road too, and it'll be a lot more seamless. And that's a cool.
So like I'm your guinea pig, and I guess you're mine.
Right. That's the cool thing, man. We could just fuck around right now because there's really not a ton of like actual limitations as to what this program has to be and what my responsibilities are as a host or whatever. It's just kind of to be here, which I almost messed up that a couple times today, and to kind of talk about liberty. So I think we're gonna do all that stuff now. Now the dream is alive. I'm just gonna keep posting the freaking link on my Facebook until somebody comes over here. I'm like that, dude. I'm like, Oh yeah, yeah. You want to not watch my show? Well, I'm gonna not talk about anything. Fine. Not realizing that like this is gonna go and be recorded and like be in our archives forever.
Yeah, live on forever.
I just, you know what? I watched. I want to say this. I'll do a little bit of shopkeeping, and then we're gonna get into some meat and potatoes. I just said I was gonna introduce you, and then I did into it. That's cool. I want to just say real quick because like now that you're here to save my ass, I could just feel comfortable like bullshitting. I watched the whole, pretty much everybody's show. So if you're watching my show right now, the second show or the first full show, whatever, episode 1.1 or whatever, then cool. I'm not saying like you have to. I'm just saying like if you are great. I watch almost everybody's show, and the ones I did, and I intend on getting back to. Obviously, I'm not gonna be able to watch every show because we're putting out like something like 50 shows a week or something. It would just take me the whole week to watch the whole every show. I'd have to just watch it every single day. But I want to watch everybody's show at least once or twice in the very beginning, and then obviously I'm gonna find my favorites and watch them. But um, I just want to say to everyone who did a show this past week, great job. Even if you think your show sucked, I know my shows were awesome and sucked at the same time. So um, thank you, everybody. And now I'm going to introduce Greg. Cool. We talked about Greg a little bit before he got here, but he's a buddy of mine from back home, back in my hometown of Hillsborough, New Jersey, which is probably the coolest place in the world for everyone who is from there. Even if we don't want to be there right now, like on the top of our list of places, I don't know, Greg. You can respond to that. Do you think Hillsborough is among the coolest places in the world?
It's always gonna be home. Um,
Yeah.
it's definitely got its downsides, but everyone we know pretty much lives here, or close by it. So it, it it's good and bad. What can I say?
I kind of feel like Hillsborough was always like that Smallville kind of feel. Like it was always like that, like not back home, like not like country, like in a hillbilly sense, but like we had that part too. But
Well, no
just
matter
like
where I've ever been, whenever I come back home, it's just bittersweet. It's like I don't want to be here, but I'm happy to be here.
I
You
feel
can't.
like I feel like the main drag, like Route 206 in Hillsborough, is like it's like it's like Main Street, Anytown, USA. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It has that picturesque feel.
exactly.
Who knows, man? Like you said, it's home. But anyway, so me and Greg, we kind of were planted in the same garden, so to speak, and we were talking in our pre-interview or pre-discussion, whatever you want to call it, the other day, and you know, it's crazy how you like when's your earliest memory of knowing me, Greg? Like probably like middle school or high school or something, or young? Was it elementary? Were you in Triangle School?
When I met you,
Yeah,
um, jeez.
it's
Yeah, I
important
went
for
to
the viewer
Triangle.
to
It's
know.
gotta be Triangle.
Triangle Tigers, man. See, we go back hardcore back in the day, like
Oh,
kindergarten, first grade, second grade situation. This is perfect because Greg, you remember me, man. I was a troublemaker, not troublemaker, but I wasn't a lover of authority back then. I'm sure you can recall, and I think the same of you, but I think you maybe held your manners a little bit more in order than I did as a kid.
I hit it a little better than you. I hated authority probably just as much, but
Yeah,
I probably didn't show it as much.
yeah.
I just bit my tongue.
What were the clues to you when you were in school that like authority was a problem? Like how did you notice that as a young person?
Well, as soon as I realized that the teachers weren't that smart, didn't know everything, and pretty much had no idea what they're talking about most of the time, except for what they rehearse year in year out. Um, just I didn't like being told what to do. I did think they knew better than me what what I should be doing. I mean, I don't know. I just didn't like the idea of being told what to do, when to eat, and everything. Just even in art class, I drew a picture of the school and named it prison.
Oh my God, really? That's
Yeah,
really deep, man. That's super symbolic. What do you know how old you were when that happened when you did that?
that was probably high school. I think freshman or sophomore year.
Hmm.
But that's how I felt all around.
Yeah, but even still, I mean, at that age, you're what, like 15 years old or something, like to make that kind of a profound statement. And it's cool that it's not like your mom and dad like with like knives in their face or something. Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong to express your hatred for your parents if you have crappy parents, but I'm just saying that, you know, at least your preoccupation with what was bothering you was the place you were, and you were able to express that. You weren't
Yeah, I
like you
mean, I
said,
think it's okay for your family to kind of guide you and tell you what to do because they have more of an interest in you than the state or your government school, or
right.
strangers in general. So I'm
Sure.
okay. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of us shared. I remember like the group of people that I sort of gravitated around. I think you were kind of in the same larger sense clique. I don't think I myself or you, from what I could tell, were even really the clicky type. Like we didn't have like that, but all the friends that we kind of all. I mean, I think that was what was cool about our high school was like there were some exceptions, but for the most part, like my experience was most people kind of got along to get along. Like there wasn't a lot of like real pettiness, but even though it was there, it wasn't to me. I wasn't dealing with it in my face all the time. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, well, I mean, the friends I had back then, generally I actually have today because they were just good people and they're going to always be good people.
Sure, that's cool, man. Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, it's cool. The network of people that you know where you start in your life sort of spreads. Now, I want to get into some liberty related stuff. But what's weird is like you talk about your friends, you talk about your past and everything like that, and for me, my experience was I kind of in the past like 4 or 5 years started to feel this way about liberty and about my political and just like you said, like we were talking about. I've always been a kind of authority questioner and like a rebellion type, but like eventually it got really concrete and really explicit for me when that occurred, and then you came back around family and friends and stuff. Were there people that gave you kickback and said like, Greg, like I think you're being selfish. Like we need more taxes. We need Obamacare. Like we need this or that government program. And were there any times since you found your libertarian views that you felt like you had to really defend them?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. Um, eh, Sometimes it's hard to explain your point of view, especially because a lot of points of views that libertarians hold aren't said in one sentence. For example, a family member during Hurricane Sandy said it was horrible to raise the price of gas even though there's an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, there's lines that are 5 blocks long,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm like, well, I thought you're conservative, supply and demand, free market, but they just didn't want to see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, and I'm always happy to engage them and try and explain my point of view, because no matter who I meet on the political spectrum, their heart's always in the right place. Maybe they just don't understand fully uh, what those means to the end actually mean.
Right, right.
Uh,
And that's the thing that I kind of realized too. When I first started to find my path to liberty, my road to liberty, I said, this stuff is also interesting and awesome for me. Like I can't wait to share this with everybody. And I went to all my family members, my mom and my dad and my sister and my friends and everything. And I start ranting and raving about all my ideas and everything. And it's so funny how slow people are to jump into something new, but how
well, to,
you
to
know,
that point, people have lives. It's not always interesting for people to look into all this stuff like we find it.
sure.
So it really takes some deep digging and looking at all the sides and the facts to really come to strong conclusions. And a lot of people just don't have that kind of time or
Right.
will.
It has to be right for the person. It has to be right for the person at their own pace. But what's weird is like for me, it hit me at a certain when I started to see this stuff. Like I've already told my story a little bit on the program, but it's not more about my story. I'll tell it over and over. It's more about everyone else's story. But when it hit me hot and heavy. Like I realized, like, oh my God, I have to stop. Like I've been saying stuff and doing stuff like I was blindly nationalistic, probably for 6 or 7 years following 9/11. Like, do you want to speak to that? Like, because obviously 9/11 and it's kind of cliche, but it's not. Whatever. Obviously happened for me at least. I was in high school, so let's say I was like what?
11th grade.
Yeah, so 16 years old or something like that. 17, 16, something like that. Yeah, and it was before I had my shit figured out in terms of my political views. So that was a chance where like I got to be like real America, like you know what I mean, like right immediately I was like, let's go kill those bastards, let's go fucking find whoever it was and hold their feet to the fire and burn them down, because that was what I was indoctrinated with. That was my, that was my brain, my programming. But going from there to where I'm at now, it's like kind of a full 180 or 360 or no 180. What would you say to that? I mean, what was your response to that event, and then what was it like coming out of that and starting to say, well, we're not finding anybody, or we're not doing what we said we were doing over there, and this war is a bunch of bunk. Like, what was your
Well,
what was your progress related to that?
I was pretty apolitical in high school, but I remember watching things like Michael Moore movies and giving them a lot of credence, maybe a little earlier than that. So I was not pretty developed in political theory or anything back then, but I kind of like you. I, I just felt like, let's get those motherfuckers. Um,
Right.
you saw them cheering in the street while our buildings are still smoldering. I went to Ground Zero maybe a week or two after that, maybe a little later, maybe that month, I forget, and saw that the hole in the ground. I had trouble breathing for the next week. I mean, it was horrific. Luckily, I didn't know anyone there, but as a country, I think we were all out for blood.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, I don't pretend to know a lot about foreign policy either, but I tend to think the Afghanistan war was probably justified at that point. At this point, it's bad policy, obviously, but back then, yeah, we were just wanted to turn the whole place into glass. I mean, that's how we all felt.
It's weird. I completely agree with you and get where you're coming from the sense that that is how the social climate was in America at the time. And I think that someone like a Ron Paul or someone to that effect, but specifically him, because he was the one that brought a lot of people to liberty and kind of opened a lot of people's eyes. People like himself, I don't think really could have the room socially whatever culturally to have his platform that he had right in the wake of what happened on 9/11, because like you said, people were really just up in arms, and people weren't trying to hear non-interventionist foreign policy and
Well,
small
I mean,
government.
really, what Ron Paul was saying, people didn't want to hear at the time was, let's take a look in the mirror and say, why did this happen? We
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve it. We weren't asking for it. But what were the reasons? 'Cause it's a bad career move to hop in a plane and fly into a building without motivation for something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what was that twisted motivation? And I think that's kind of what he was saying, but you know, I
Okay.
guess rationality wasn't there.
Right. No, but I think in a larger sense, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. So you could always look back and say, well, the war wasn't justified. I think it's so easy for a lot of people in my position to just say, well, of course, no war is justified, and I, in a sense, agree with that statement. But in another sense, from a country standpoint, which I don't even see myself in any way associated with any nation, the fact that I have a social security number, the fact that I was, on the books of this and that, voting record. I mean, what I did in my past is my past, but who I am today, I don't stand under any recognition of any authority or any authority that isn't something I volunteer. If you don't have a contract with my name on it and a signature, or a verbal understanding of what our relationship is, we don't have anything. Don't expect anything from me because I do my own thing. Um, so in that sense, I don't even really care what the United States does or what another country does because they're not doing it in my name anyway. That's the way I feel now. But
Well, I disagree with that a little bit because at the end of the day, maybe it's not done in your name, but it's done with your money.
not necessarily. I mean, and here's the other thing too. Like, if the thief comes up to me and steals my wallet and then goes and buys a bunch of handgun shells and kills people, I'm not the murderer just because the guy did it with my money.
You're saying because it was taken by force.
Of course, yeah. I didn't I
Yeah,
didn't consent to any
I
money ever
appreciate
taken
that
from me.
point of view.
Yeah.
But what bothers me is when I travel around the world, I really get happy when people say, "Oh, I want to visit the U.S. so bad, it's my dream," you know, and that makes me feel good. And you know, I kind of like to identify with that. It happens less and less these days, but you know, so but I understand where you're coming from. I too, I believe.
And this is an important distinction too. I think that if we can get to this point I want to bring up right now is you kind of put up out there is that there's this notion that we enjoy, and I think a lot of the people who have shows and who are part of the Voluntary Virtues Network might share this sentiment that I'm an American, you know what I mean? Like I'm the most patriotic guy or whatever out there. I'm the first one to tell you I'm not a patriot. I'm not proud to be an American. I don't know what any of that means. I think that's really baseless, shallow, superficial type of language. But I don't mean that to knock you or someone else who does wear that as a badge of pride. I just ask people to introspect further and find out what they're really saying, because there's two things going on. There's the nation, which has the flag and has the government and has the buildings. And then there's the people and the country, which is the land, which is the tradition, which is the culture, and which is the actual families, the actual people that great-great-grandparents built this nation and who had the corner bank or the corner store or the corner insurance company or whatever that built up the land in America that we love. I think that second thing is what people around the world really admire and want to be a part of. I don't think it has anything to do with the bureaucracy or the buildings or the flag. Would you agree, or what do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, people I think identify with the principles the country was founded with. The people are pretty extraordinary here. We're very giving and charitable. You know, there's no other place like it in the world. I don't think anyone is too infatuated with the bureaucracy and all that nonsense. If anything, they're probably disenchanted with it because it holds back a lot of people from even coming to visit. Um, uh, so, yeah, as for like, it's a pretty young culture, so it's hard to say like I really love the culture because when you travel around, it's hard to say. There's pretty specific different cultures, you know, whether you go to Europe or somewhere in Asia, but in the U.S. it's so muddled and new. It's kind of a really good thing, I think.
So would you say that United States is kind of like a teenager trying to find themselves, like just grappling with their own identity, so to speak?
Yeah, it really is. It's almost like they're trying to identify themselves. They're in high school and they're trying to find an identity. Or maybe just because we haven't had 1,000 years of isolation, like say China, so we don't have our own specific food or anything like that.
Yeah, we do. We have freedom fries, bro, and we have
American cheese.
well, we just take all the other food around the world and slap the word American on it. Oh, we pronounce it different, and we call it like hamburger. Probably was like ein Hamburger, like some German like dish, and then we just said, let's put some A1 sauce on it, some lettuce, and call it a hamburger. Yeah, let me get a burger. Just
Well,
steal stuff and call it ours.
I mean,
America.
that's possible for better or for worse. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. People around the world like KFC and things like that.
I don't know that that's cool, man. I mean, like I'm not a corporation basher because I think that they're just playing by the rules that were given to them to play by and saying, well, like, how do you define success? Well, I'm trying to do well. I'm trying to have a lot of customers. I'm trying to have a lot of profit. So it's not their fault that the system is set up for them to be corrupt. I kind of give them more the fair pass than the government because people think the government is on their side. But where I'm going with this is like the corporatism of America, the commercialism of what like we get other countries like to do sweatshop labor for our products, and I say our, I mean like come on now, let's go in everyone's closet and find not a single item made from a sweatshop. Like we're all guilty,
Right.
in the sense of not giving a shit long enough to find out where stuff is coming from and trying to be
But
selective. You know what I mean?
that's a little bit loaded, I think, because no one wants, 7-year-olds making soccer balls or Nike shoes or anything like that. But if you stop and say, what's the alternative? If you take away this job that's helping them support their family because it's a better paying job than anyone else in their family can get, what happens to them? Does their family starve? Does that sweatshop child go into prostitution? Is it the lesser of two evils? I mean, I understand lesser of two evils is still evil, but these are people's lives, and you have to consider. So,
Right. I think that yes. I mean, I'll totally agree with you there. I think that if someone wants to work for 10 cents a day or for $1 a day or whatever the case may be, that's something that they are economically interested in taking part in. Maybe their set of value structure is way different than mine, and maybe it makes sense for them somehow. I don't know, but that's their choice to make, not mine. If someone wants to pay someone 10 cents a day and someone wants to work for 10 cents a day, it's really not my position to step in and try to impede them. However, I may not choose to buy the product because I feel like, maybe there's some sort of inherent moral conflict there. But I think the
right.
point I was trying to make is that the glory and glamour of America is so easy to fall in love with from a Hollywood and mainstream media standpoint. But then when you really look beneath the surface and in between the cracks, America is not what she says she is. Do you not agree or?
I agree to an extent. I mean, every day they tighten the screw with every little law and things like that. The nanny state kind of stuff, um, which seems to be at odds with the slogan "Land of the Free." But it, I still think of it as probably the greatest country I've been to, all in all. Um, there's definitely problems, issues, and changes that need to be made. Um, but
Well, here's the thing, Greg. You call yourself a libertarian.
yeah,
You found that philosophical basis for your ideologies and stuff like that in your life. That's real high level stuff. That's real. That's interesting. It's good conversation topic for something. But how does the rubber meet the road? First of all, for you in your life, and I don't mind you coming in on the defensive side for America. America is truthfully that maybe I don't want to get used to calling it that. I think that it's just whatever that this part of the world that we're both from. It's important to us both because of it being our home and everything like that. We talked about that in the first half hour, but not necessarily for you to just isolate your criticisms of America into what you think is sterilely acceptable and what is fair, but you say that America is still one of the greatest countries. Let's tell the audience, tell the listener what other nations you've been to, so they have a context. I mean, where have you been?
um, well, I spent about a year in Singapore. I lived there, and then I traveled all around Asia from there. It was a good jumping off point. So I've been to briefly Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Japan, um, Malaysia, Indonesia, um, Korea. I forget. That's about it. Maybe a
That's a
couple
lot.
more.
That's a lot more. I mean, I've honestly been to Bermuda on a cruise, and um, that might be it, man. I think that's the only technicality of leaving America that I've ever done. So this is why I like the fact that you're on the show today. So you went all over the world and you come back and you still feel favorable to your home. What is it one essential ingredient, or is it, because I personally kind of can't wait to leave America and try out other nations and see if I can't find a better taste of freedom for myself
Well,
somewhere
first of all,
else.
I recommend you doing that,
Yeah.
um, because I forget where I heard it, but someone once said, and it's completely true, when you're an expat working overseas, they treat you like a guest and not like property. And that's so true, because you really do feel like property when you work over here. So I recommend it if you can get out of the country, especially for long stretches of time. Really learn the culture, learn the ins and outs. Um, it's definitely worth it. Um, so, so I just
No, no,
that
no. That's
was the
useful,
question.
man. No, that was useful. No, the main question is, like, you kind of said that America is still. I mean, I know it's your home, but if you could take yourself out of that perspective for a second and just say, yeah, I've been all over the place, and to that point of it feeling like you're a guest in another person's
So,
home. What was it like? I mean, what was it like to, can you imagine what it would be like to be a citizen in these nations? I mean, do you feel like the guest thing would wear off if you were to move there full time? I mean, what about that?
So I fell in love with Singapore. I could easily live there. It's called Asia Light. Everyone speaks English. The mass transit's simple. The weather's always hot. Um, and it's in the middle of everything. It's the food capital of the world, if you ask me. So I could easily see myself living there. Um, so, and it didn't feel repressive. You know, you hear all the stories about
Caning.
Singapore rule of the iron hand. You can't chew gum.
Is that
Things
true? You
like
can't chew
that.
gum?
You can if you have a prescription, or you
Shut
bring
up.
it from outside the country. You can bring like 2 packs with you.
Get out of here. There's a real law against gum chewing in Singapore?
Yeah. So what was happening? I think in the 80s, people were leaving gum all over on the sidewalk, on seats in buses, and it
Hmm.
was causing a huge externality problem, right? And so they said, let's make a law making gum illegal. They'll get a fine because you were inconveniencing other people.
No, you're
Like
not. No, you're not. Not by chewing gum. Not by chewing gum.
if you're spitting it out
If you're,
and
yeah, but what if like that's like saying let's outlaw tacos because someone could pass gas in an elevator. Like no,
right,
like
right.
we
Point
don't we
taken.
don't.
The,
I know
the
you're not.
crime is spitting it out, right? You're right. But
Yeah, but it's the same for anything. Like we shouldn't let people have guns because they could just shoot anybody they wanted. Like of course, well, let's take away knives. Let's take away pencils. Let's put everyone in. Put rubber gloves on everyone's hands
right.
and
But all that aside, you do have to deal with that, right? I never felt repressed, and their economic liberty is just unparalleled. Um, and it's evident because it's next to Malaysia. It used to be part of Malaysia. I think it's maybe 40 or 50 years old, Singapore. And then they turned it from like a backwater fishing village into this economic powerhouse. And how did they do it? Just economic freedom, free market, pretty much. And that's the secret. I mean, Malaysia's still an ass backwards country, and so it's not an excuse of location. It's really just policy. So there's a lot of reasons to fall in love with Singapore, I think.
so just to recap, so you can say that like Singapore had a little bit of its own social kind of oddities in terms of how they organize society or how they structure things, but when it comes down to economic freedom, they had America beat, is what you're saying.
Yeah, hands down.
Yeah, and what was the? Do you know anyone that started a business or anything in Singapore? Do you know anyone that went through that experience, like a small business owner or anything when you were over there? Did you meet anybody who was an entrepreneur?
No, but I met a lot of expatriates from other countries. So believe it or not, there's a huge French population, and it's because the unemployment rate in France is so high, they all came to Singapore. I don't know when they started a business, but they all just went there looking for jobs, and guess what? They would find it.
And you went there for a job, and you found one, correct?
Yeah, so I volunteered. I was working in Chicago at the time, and this opportunity came up, and I had been to Asia a bunch of times before that, so I was like, yeah, sign me up. And so that was my first time in Singapore when I volunteered for this, and it was great. I was sad to leave.
So you went there on a volunteer basis. You didn't have an income, or were you paid to do the work you were there doing?
Uh, I was paid, and I was given housing and stuff like that too. So my experience maybe not be completely typical because rent out there is pretty expensive. It's more
Really?
than New York.
Hmm.
So the cost of living is high. Um, but the jobs are out there, and you don't have to live in the middle of the city like I did either. So it can be cheaper. But I did have it. I did get real lucky by getting this opportunity.
Put the travel timeline against the personal philosophical like revelation timeline. Like, where were you physically and developmental wise as a person in your life when you started to realize your philosophical leanings towards liberty and towards individualism? Like, as an adult, when you started to understand the views, where were you in your life?
Yeah, so I always knew I wasn't Democrat because some of those ideas just seemed bizarre, and same thing with Republican. I didn't fit into any of those two buckets. Then I was in college, Rider University, and there was an economics class, and I was like, wow, this makes sense. And so I went deeper into that. I drilled more into economics on my own, um, which is just fascinating. But I still know there's people that thought similar to me, like me, you know, liberty, until I found the Penn Jillette show on K-Rock way back in the day. Do you remember that? It was back on K-Rock, and he had like an hour-long show, and he would just talk constantly about juggling, and libertarianism, and atheism. And I was like, holy shit.
I love it how juggling is just as much of an important topic for Penn Jillette as his political and religious views. Like, he spaces his day out into like equal parts political philosophy, and juggling, and religious philosophy.
So that was the turning point where I'm like, oh, there's a name for what I believe, and by the way, other people think this way too.
So Penn Jillette was your door opening guy. He was your gateway guy.
Right. So I mean, our views pretty much aligned. I didn't know there was a name for it, of that political philosophy. He opened my eyes to that, and maybe some other things too, of course. But that's really where I put a name to it. But my philosophy has always just been logic and don't fuck with my shit, I won't fuck with yours. So
it's not too hard to wrap your head around something so simple, but I think that when put into practice, and what kind of pisses me off too, and I want to get your take on this, is I hear all this stuff from people. Like, we talked about trying to open people's eyes and trying to give people an entryway onto the road, or one of the many roads to liberty, as we know that there's many that get you there. What frustrates me is people's, like we talked about, people's not willingness to see, but people want to talk about this idea called pragmatism, and it really gets under my skin because people use pragmatism as an excuse to not think and to not apply what they say into reality. If I say I'm a non-aggressionist, that means I'm a non-aggressionist. That means I don't believe in taxes, and that means I don't believe in punching you in your face, and that means I don't believe in taking your stuff from you if you didn't want to give it to me. So explore those ideas. How do you apply pragmatism to your life? I have no tolerance for it. How much tolerance do you have, and what's the line for you?
I mean, I wish people would just say what they mean and not act any differently either. So many people say they believe in that kind of stuff, but when it comes down to it, that's not how they vote, or their actions speak differently. It's frustrating.
Right, but even just something very fundamental, like I know we were talking about the show, and not to put you on blast, but we're coming down to the last 10 minutes of the show, so I kind of like to get a little bit more controversial, and because if I have some viewers, I want them to see that, this isn't a softball tournament here. We're trying to, challenge people's ideas. Even in your own life, like I know we spoke in the pre-show, you said, you're a small government guy, you're big, not, I wouldn't say you're a big L libertarian, but you're certainly not an anarcho-capitalist, or truthfully, I dropped this bomb on my audience in the last 10 minutes, but you're not what I would consider to be a voluntarist in the fully pure sense, but that's nothing to hang out to drive for. But like I said, where do you draw the line? Where do you say that, yeah, these aren't real, this isn't the application of my views, but I'm gonna agree with this. Like, I think voting and I think taxation is aggression, and you don't fully disagree, do you?
I don't think voting is, taxation is, but the thing is, voting shouldn't matter as much as it does, because they shouldn't have as much power as they do. It shouldn't be important who gets voted in, right? That's my philosophy. The people who get voted in shouldn't be able to drastically change lives and the country and things like that. So,
without getting too far into that, but keeping you on that as well, just to fuel your fire a little bit. Voting isn't aggression, but taxation is. And you said it doesn't matter who gets elected in a sense. Am I getting from you that you're kind of a constitutionalist, and are you saying that if we could just adhere to the Constitution, we'd kind of be in a good situation? Is that your idea?
I think so. It's definitely a step in the right direction. I agree wholeheartedly with the Constitution, and I wish people would adhere to it.
But don't you see a fundamental problem with the notion of trying to organize society around a set of boundaries or rules that were written? I feel like, not that time betrays the meaning, but I feel like society discounts the meaning due to the fact that they can kind of push off the relevance, say, well, this is from a
Well,
different time and
it
whatnot.
wasn't written around society. It was written as a constraint for government, right? It was what a government was allowed to do, which is completely unusual.
Yeah, but that's formed in the vision of the people. So the people said at that time, here's the notion of an ideal government, right? They're really small. They help us protect property rights. They don't have a standing army. They don't collect or raise taxes. And then boom, 13 states, whatever, boom, 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 Constitution, Bill of Rights ratified. And not a full 4 years later is George Washington himself, going around collecting the whiskey tax, which is a greater tax on the nation than the tea tax and than any other taxes that were imposed by the crown. So what good did the Constitution do if only 2 years later it began to be soiled by the very founder of the nation?
Right, and it's a good point. And to be honest, I'm not against all taxes as long as they're consumption taxes and they're used for the right purpose and there's clarity in it.
This is why, and I don't mean to cut you off, Greg. I'm sorry. I just want to say this is why I know the show has a lot of value, because there's people like yourselves who are, in my opinion, right there on the edge, and they're just when you say something like I'm not against all taxes. I think you need to look into more of what taxation really results in. Like, it's what destroys the economy. It's what creates poverty. It's what hurts the social safety net we have by manipulating an economic system like that. With that
Right, it does, of course. The more you tax something, less you get of it, right? And I think the most harming tax, more than the whiskey tax, is 1913 when income tax was created.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that to me is a destructive tax. It's not a voluntary tax. To me, a voluntary tax is, I'm buying this pack of cigarettes, and I'm against this. Just an example.
Sure.
But let's tax the cigarettes. It only affects smokers, right? You can choose not to smoke, or you can buy rolling tobacco, or something like that. You can get around it.
Yeah, here would be an idea. So you say, okay, we have a government that asks corporations if they'd like to tax their customers, and the corporations can choose to. I'm the tobacco company. I want my business. I want the industry to be regulated, and I want my customers to know that R.J. Reynolds stands behind nothing but the best tobacco products. So we don't mind paying the. And I know we're passing it on to our customers, but as customers, we want our customers to not mind paying it. But is it ever really voluntary, from any sense? I mean, I'm buying the cigarettes. I don't want the tax. I just want the cigarettes part. Do I have to pay the tax part too?
Right. So, okay, as a proper libertarian, I would like private roads, for example, but we don't have that. We have public roads for the most part. So next best thing would be have a gas tax that goes to fixing the roads. Now, I know it doesn't go to fixing the roads, but ideally it would. Right? You see what I'm saying? So to me,
I know what you're saying.
So I don't have to have a car, but if I use the roads, I have a car, I'm paying gas tax, which ideally should go to fix the roads that I drive on. So it's like a consumption tax in the fact that I'm paying for something that I use. I'm getting something out of it.
Yeah.
So I wish I didn't have where I'm coming from.
I hear where you're coming from. I wish I had more time in the hour. We have about 5 minutes left, but what gets me is I had a little technical difficulties because I wanted to introduce you to my audience and let my audience see what kind of guy you were and what our background was, and then start to see where we can pick up. The platform for this show is going to be this type of stuff. Like I'd like to have you back on, Greg, and then have other people on in the future who can speak to their story. But in the last few minutes, picking up where we are. Just like the Constitution, and just like all the taxes, right? I mean, that's what I feel like they're all the same in the sense that we say we're going to do one thing with the Constitution. What happens? We say we're going to start a tax and it's going to go to X, Y, and Z, and it goes to something else. What happens? So don't we just say screw central planning altogether? Don't we just start to do things?
Can I just say, this is refreshing. Usually, I'm the most libertarian or craziest person in the room, but you make me feel like a big government liberal. This is a nice change.
You sound like one to me through my ears because I'm so anti-state, now.
I guess my philosophy also is to slow change, not abrupt. So I always want to phase things out slowly and get back to the beginning, and not drastic change too. And maybe your way is best, and I could be open to a persuasive argument to change my mind. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but you know, I think that's a big leap to get there.
Absolutely. Uh, we have a couple more minutes for something else. I want to ask you, now that you're back in the States, now that you're back in America, are you planning on traveling anymore? Are you planning on trying to find out what other nations are like in the world, or are you kind of ready to plant roots and call it a
Yes,
day?
I just got back from Japan. Um, that was that was a good trip. It was my second time there. Um, as for future travels, I still haven't been to Europe yet, believe it or not. So I have my eye on that. Um, I did want to go to North Korea, but everyone keeps telling me it's a terrible idea, and they're probably right.
Well, I heard,
But
didn't, what, Dennis Rodman or somebody went there?
yeah, Dennis Rodman did.
You're in good company.
Well, I mean, I understand the whole nation is a big theater, it's a big prison nation, but it can't last forever, and I'm kind of fascinated by it, and I want to see it before it's gone. Um,
That's
so that's
fascinating,
on the
man. That's
list.
fascinating to me that you could be fascinated. I mean, I'm fascinated by North Korea in a clinical sense, like I'm fascinated by bacteria and under a microscope. And don't take this to say that I think a person from North Korea is the same as a germ. Please don't misconstrue that. What I'm saying is that it's, to me, that's a population of persons so far wrecked by their mental programming that they don't. I don't think they many of them may not have redeemable lives because they can't undo the mental damage that was done to their
Oh yeah,
framework.
these are people who've never heard of Coca-Cola. I mean,
No,
their
they're
idea of the
people that
internet is an old guy sitting in a library who will answer all your questions.
they think that their president or their leader is actually a deity. I mean that's how government came to
Well,
power.
do they really think that, or are they forced to think that at gunpoint? Right?
I think
It's so
some
it's so hard to say. Maybe it's a mix.
I think if some have taken the poison pill so much into their diet that it's one and the same. That's their flavor of Kool-Aid they
Right.
drink every day. So
And in general, I like things in extremes. I like to see the extreme of both sides, like because that way I could find the middle where I belong. And I know I'm not over on that end, and I'm not sure I'm over on the opposite end where you are. Um, but uh, sometimes you find the gray area by finding the extremes. So, and in general, I just find it fascinating. So that's on my list as soon as they stop kidnapping Americans that go over to visit.
Greg, I need to have you on this show live from North Korea if you can find an internet connection. But if not,
They
as
just
soon as
started
you get
allowing cell
back,
phones.
then you're going to be our on the ground correspondent in North Korea. Um, on that note, I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. You are my first like full-time guest like that came on for a whole episode, and that's awesome. I have some big guests planned. Mike Shanklin will be on the network in the coming weeks. He said he would stop by the program. Um, I don't mind saying that I have a verbal confirmation from Nima Vadadi of the Freedom Fiends, who just stepped down off his post with Michael W. Dean, and he said he's not done with the Liberty Movement. He's just being a daddy first and foremost. So he said he'd come on this program in the coming weeks as well. I'm going to hold him to that, and we got some other big guests coming up. Right now, it's going into the 9 o'clock hour. We got Chuck Ford with the Liberty Geek on at 9. Greg, again, thank you so much. We're going to have you back. Anything you want to plug?
No, just good being here. Congratulations on the new show. Hope to see you again.
All right, buddy. We'll stay in touch off of the network, and I'm definitely going to have you back on. We didn't get everything covered today, but thanks so much. And stay tuned on Voluntary Virtues, guys. Hit us back next week, 8 p.m. on Fridays, Eastern Standard Time. Every Friday, Roads to Liberty. I'm your host, Randall Parker, signing off. Take care, guys.